Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, small children, and gifted woodland animals, welcome once again to Plot Points. I'm Ben Riggs.
I'm Brad Davies.
And I am Sarah Babe, featuring today our special guest.
I'm Craig Campbell.
On the Muppet
Craig.
Show tonight.
Show tonight.
I wonder if we're in any copyright endangerment peril because of your background. Probably not.
Nah.
Who's going to really care?
It's
Don't
a Zoom
say
background. We're good.
Don't say that out loud.
Who
God.
at Disney is going to be watching this and be like, we need to go after that podcast right
Dude,
now?
don't say the D word. That's how you get caught.
It's true. So I guess I should point out to our audio listeners, Craig's background is from the Muppet Show. I think the title sequence, right? When there's a bunch of Muppets.
Yeah, it's the big, the colonnade with all the little spots with all the different Muppets in them. My head's in the way. You can't see like Kermit and Fozzie, some of the main characters that are kind of in the central area, but you can see like there's Beaker over my shoulder, the Swedish chef.
Beaker's the best.
I was earlier today. I was running a play test of a game that is sort of inspired by the Muppets.
Ooh.
So we don't call them Muppets in the game, but
What do you call them? Now I'm interested.
Well, you just refer to them as like puppet people. Or,
puppet people. Okay.
Yeah. In the game, like, Muppets don't, other than like the welcome to the Muppet Show. They call it the Muppet Show. Like they don't refer to themselves as Muppets very often. Like Kermit is not a puppet. Kermit is just a frog who talks.
You're right. That's true. They just call him a frog.
D-frog.
Yeah. Well, we have fallen down a rabbit hole. So let me ask. Ask this.
Would it be a frog hole?
A frog pond? I don't know.
Oh.
We're mixing our metaphors. It's a Saturday night, and I'm one drink in. This is going to be great. So, Craig, who are you? Why are we having you on the show again?
I'm the owner of Nerdburger Games. I design and publish tabletop role-playing games, and right now I've got a Kickstarter going for a solo fantasy RPG called Secrets of the Vibrant Isle. It's all about you portraying a character who has shipwrecked on a mysterious island, and you're going to go exploring and meet the inhabitants and make friends and see if you can convince the inhabitants and the island itself, because it's magical and mystical, convince them that you can stay. Otherwise, the island's going to boot you off if you're not right. If you don't belong there.
I will say I absolutely love the conceit of this, mainly because reading through it reminded me of a rather awful day I had at work where I got lost in a swamp. I found a coyote femur, another like skeleton of something, got yelled at by like 4 frogs, and had a hawk that was like stalking me. And then there was an owl. Like, it was a rough day. But this reminds me of that, where I was someplace familiar, like I understood the world, but I was someplace specifically unfamiliar. Like, I didn't know where the road was in relation to where I was. I kind of knew where the river was in relation to where I was, but I grasped onto that very hard, and it was like, yes, I like this.
So I get a very strong sense of a certain early 21st century television hit. Or am I wrong? Does it have any Lost DNA in
it? The idea came out. The idea for the game came out of a few different places, and one of them was the idea of, I was trying to think of something to do with Lost, or the idea of Lost. Characters shipwrecked on an island. There's all sorts of mysterious things going on. There are people there, and you don't know what their agenda is, what they're up to. And so, like, I bounced around a few different ideas over the course of maybe the last couple of years, trying to kind of figure out where I could take that, and then ultimately. The initial kind of inception of this solo RPG was to make it very Lost-like, make it very kind of creepy and like the people that you find on the island are mysterious, and they've got an agenda, and like they're out to get you, and then deciding to go kind of a different direction with that, make something a little more happy and fun, and like there's dark parts of the island. There's kind of some deeper, darker places, but it is generally just kind of a cozy game of exploring the island and discovering all of its secrets and finding these people and getting to know them and becoming part of their community.
It has a very Jim Henson feel to me, where it can get dark if you want it to, or if you make those choices. But otherwise, it's generally pretty comfy and not too scary, unless you break out the Firefall Core, take your head off and be like, what do you mean you can't remove your head?
So you said this is a single player role playing game, right?
It is.
Wow. Okay. So, could you tell us about that? Tell us about the system, and because I played my first single player role playing game last year. It was Tim Hutchings' 1,000 Year Vampire. It was a ton of fun. I really enjoyed it. And given the state of 2021, people are spending a lot of time by themselves, either through choice or, well, I'm getting dark now. Anyway, just what's the system like?
Well, basically, the like in a typical RPG, you've got, player or players who are portraying characters, and then you've got a GM that's kind of, setting the stage, presenting the challenges, kind of laying out all the stuff that's not your character. And what this game does is essentially relegates that to the game book itself. And you portray a character, you put together a character, basic, your own concept, who this person is. And there's you've got 4 traits, which are discover, interact, learn, and survive, which are like the basic things that you're going to do on this island. And then you've got a few tracks of points, like resources that you keep track of, which is worry, wonder, and willpower. Willpower allows you to kind of push your way through some challenges. Worry you accrue as you come across like worrisome, scary, frightening things. Wonder you accrue as you discover the wonderful things, the beautiful things about the island, and you can spend those points to do different things. And your character can do like a number of things on their turn, and it becomes kind of like sort of a choose your own adventure game in some respects, where you make a choice about to do a few different, you've got some different things you can do. You can scavenge the beach scavenge your shipwreck to kind of supply yourself. You can protect your camp, which helps you to deal with some of the bad things that you come across on the island. As you spend time there, you can study what you've learned and improve your character. You can explore the island, and you can visit the inhabitants. Once you kind of know that they're there, there's actually an option for you to just go ahead and try to seek them out once you've discovered that there's somebody on the island with you. And the explore the island section that's the one where you're going to roll. If you go to explore the island, you'll roll percentile dice. So you've got 100 different options. If you roll doubles, you encounter the inhabitants. But if you roll any of the other 90 results, there's 90 different encounters, 90 different explorations, as they're called in the game. And they vary across like very kind of dark, weird things, just kind of, light and fluffy, like fantastical things. In some cases, you'll be called upon to make a trait check to try to succeed at something. You might fail. Different things happen. You gain gear, you gain magic, lose magic. You find creatures that you can befriend. You find other creatures that will follow you around and become a nuisance to you. And you have to try to find a way to get rid of them. There's all those sorts of things. And then once you've discovered that there are inhabitants there, you can also then choose to visit the inhabitants, seek them out. And each time you visit the inhabitants, you learn a little bit more about them. There's basically 5 encounters that you go through where you kind of glimpse them, and you get a general sense of like what they look like. And then as you go, you learn more and more, and you learn some of the kind of capabilities that they have. And by the end, you learn what their community is like, and you're invited to visit their community. And at that point, one of the inhabitants becomes a friend, and they get a little spot right on your character sheet, and they accompany you on your adventures from that point forward. And ultimately, you're seeking to take on one of multiple finale scenarios. You have 4 weeks of game time to prove yourself to the inhabitants in the island, and you'll attempt to do one of these finales, and then you start down that road, and you either succeed or fail at it. But you know, in the process of exploring the island, you're gaining like, you know, items and things and creatures and things that can help you and magic that can help, that will give you the capabilities to more easily succeed at those finales, those finale scenarios. So that's the long and short of the game, of kind of, and so there's a lot of dice rolling for success and failure on different things, as well as rolling to kind of determine what you stumble upon when you go out exploring.
Essentially, is this almost an evolved version of like the Lone Wolf adventure game? Or was that never your jam back in the day?
I'm not familiar.
Okay, so long story short, it's like a choose your own adventure, but it had a randomizer in the back and a character sheet in the back. So you would have to keep track of like gaining and losing items, and you actually would have to make rolls essentially as you're going through what was otherwise just a choose your own adventure book. But it's sounding kind of like that to me, unless which I mean is a compliment, because like ever since those choose your own adventure board games came out, I've been like, these were actually excellent. Like, you know, for an analog world before video games, like this was a great way to spend many hours when I was growing up. So for
yeah,
example,
it's similar to that. Yeah, it sounds like there's a lot of shared DNA, even though it's you know, parallel
simultaneous
evolution.
creation. Yeah, parallel evolution. And so is everything just being logged on your character sheet then?
Yeah, you're keeping track of it all on a character sheet. The game is built in such a way that you can essentially play it in kind of like, there's multiple modes, right? You could play everything I just described. You can play as kind of an adventure game that might play out in about 2 hours. But you can also,
I like that, by the way.
You could also,
I really, really like that.
yeah, you can, if you want a longer experience, you could journal as you're going and keep a journal for your character. You could map the island as you go. And depending on how much, you know, how much writing you like to do, or how detailed you like to get with your maps, it could be a 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 hour experience.
I'm looking forward to this game when we get it after we kickstart it. Because in the Kickstarter, you specifically say like, oh, you want to play it for like 2 hours? Maybe you could play like 30 minutes on your lunch. I'm like, I'm gonna do it. So I'm really excited about that. And I'm really glad you had like the 2 versions of it, because I think it really speaks to the replayability of the game. And along with the gigantic, in my opinion, amount of encounters that you can make a different character each time and have different numbers and different spots of your stats and everything. And I think that's a really simple and very elegant way to keep it replayable. And now, can this be played with another person, do you think?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, the game book basically presents these challenges. They're just pre-written. Like think of it as a very well written, you know, I don't know, well written is the right word, but like think of it as a very completely written adventure.
Never crap on your own dreams, Craig. It's well written.
Yeah, where the GM, and it is to that extent too, because there was a co-designer who wrote actually 70 of the encounters.
Oh, who was it?
Shireen Gilchrist, who has written, she's contributed to all 3 of the Capers supplements. So I had her come in and co-design. She did, well, it was 60 of the 90 encounters, the exploration. She wrote 60 of them. I wrote 30. But there's the replayability is there in your playing a different character with different strengths and weaknesses. It's in how many different explorations there are, whether you succeed or fail at those. You know, you could play a second time and hit some of the same explorations, but this time you succeed or this time you fail when you did the other last time. And with the inhabitants as well, you're essentially world building them as you go. The inhabitants are not defined as like, well, this is exactly what they are in the game. It's like each time you encounter them, you learn a little bit more about them. And there's a list of 10 things that, you know, there's a table to roll on for 10 items, 10 aspects of like their size or their nuances about how they move and act. And you can, you know, roll on that table or pick the thing that just seems most interesting to you at the moment. And so like every time you play, the inhabitants could be very, very different.
So we kind of touched on the fact that it has that choose your own adventure feel to it, and that's huge for me because I was a huge choose your own adventure fan. In fact, I still have a whole bunch sitting on my bookshelf. So I think that's amazing. Also, I've looked at how they are written, and of course, young me back in the day was like, how do you write this? And of course, older me is looking at this, and there's actually some websites that have plotted out the storylines as they weave their way through them. And it was really interesting to see the decision points, how they expanded the story, and then decision points on how they contracted the story. And I guess I'm curious to see how you approach this writing, you and the co-designer, how you both approach this writing for this story. Did you have like specific decision points you're looking for, or like did you kind of weave? Like I'm really curious now. So
okay, my recollection of Choose Your Own Adventures was there were a variety of interconnected paths. There was like if you like you said, if you mapped it all out, you'd created a web, and so you could only get to this page by going through like these 3 or 4 routes. And some routes might be quick to get to that, and some routes might be longer and more convoluted to get to that. In this game, it's not quite that involved. There are certain encounters that will send you to other encounters. Like there's an encounter where you start at the top of a slippery hill and you end up at the bottom in a different encounter where you can encounter the bottom of the hill separately somewhere else. But there's not quite as much of that weaving around. It's more like I'm going to explore the island. I go out, I make a roll. This is what I find this time.
That's some solid hill knowledge.
And
solid.
So there's the idea kind of is that the island is mystical and it hides its secrets from you. So you can't necessarily just keep going to the same places. There's a spot on the character sheet where you can make a list of encounter numbers of ones that you would like to return to. So that instead of rolling, like maybe you go to an encounter, you fail at doing the thing that there was to do there. You'd like to come back there. You say, make a note of what that one is. And then somewhere down the road, when you're playing and you've got more resources and capabilities, okay, now I'm going to go back there and try to do that thing that I wasn't able to do last time. But you're limited. You can only do that 4 times. Otherwise, the island keeps pushing things around and bamboo. It confounds you and confuses you, or maybe it literally moves things from place to place because it's magical. And one way or the other, it ends up being a lot of different encounters.
So you have solved the problem that younger me couldn't handle when I was like, oh, I need to come back to this, and I'd put like my finger there, and then I'd read what the other like 9 figures, and that was the beginning of my Save Scum career, where I would be reading a book and I'd try and use my thumbs to turn the page and try and remember to go back. So that sounds much more elegant, and also better. I like the constriction down to 4, so you don't have to like try and remember, oh yeah, I got to go back to this. You can't necessarily 100% remember everything in the island. I kind of like that conceit where it's like you only get 4 save slots. Be judicious.
Yeah, you have to be careful because you could conceivably mess up on more than 4 encounters that you want to really try to come back to. So like you get to that 3rd or 4th spot and you're like, do I save this one? Or maybe like I'm only halfway through my time on the island. Like there might be something that I really want to hang on to more. Yeah.
I feel like that's a big problem I would have because I fail a lot at stuff, especially when rolling dice. And I like that idea of only 4 save slots to go back to. It also reminds me a lot of specifically the BioWare RPG games, where I will sometimes have a full notebook next to me of like, okay, I need to go back here. Okay, I need to go back and do this. Okay, I need to go back and do that. Like I do that a lot when I'm playing video games, and that's a really neat mechanic to put in there.
So were choose your own adventures a big thing for you? Listening to you, I'm guessing they weren't.
They were to an extent. Yeah. I mean, I had a handful.
Okay.
I don't have them anymore. They got sold probably through a garage sale or something at some point by my parents. But yeah, I had a number of them. I enjoyed them quite a bit. And then like, I've also, I've played your online text adventures, which isn't terribly different from what this is as well, except that it's not quite so prescribed by like you're in a map and you kind of remember which direction you go. It's a little more random than that. But there's a lot of the same kind of or the same, there's shared DNA there too, where there's like, you have to remember like, this, you can't get past this area unless you have this item or you do this thing. And you either don't have that item or you haven't learned to do that thing yet. And the same thing can happen here with those save points where you might like, I can't get past this because I need my discover check to be really good. And right now it's not very good. So I'm going to take the opportunity whenever that presents itself to make my discover check better. And then I'll come back here.
One of the reasons I like having you on the show is I feel like you're always trying something new.
It's my curse.
I mean, I love Apocalypse World as much as the next person, but again, this is not just, oh, here's another version of Apocalypse World, and again, there have been great versions of Apocalypse World. I'm not knocking anybody who's found success doing that, but like the thing I find interesting just on its face is like if Thousand Year Vampire takes role-playing games, which normally are a conversation, and makes it into a journaling exercise, it seems like this is taking what a role-playing game is and moving it into the brain of the player, almost exclusively, more than anything else. And I can't think of another brain that quite does that. Because if they're reading and interacting with a prompt, that's where the game is going to exist and is entirely in their head and not in the air in front of you as you're talking to other players, correct?
Correct.
Okay, good.
And it may exist in like whatever it is you write. So like if you do take the journaling aspect, that's certainly there if you decide to journal the game.
Man, again, I just find that really, really interesting. And I'm trying to wrap my mind around it a little bit.
I'll throw this out there real quick. You can blame Derek Kamal of Shoreless Skies, who inspired this, me kind of going down this road when he created a game and kickstarted it earlier this year called The Broken Cask, which is you are a tavern owner in a fantasy world. And so you're running the tavern and taking care of employees and patrons and everything. And you're sending adventurers out on quests. Like you're not the adventurer going on the quest, taking the job from the tavern owner. You're the tavern owner who says, okay, you need to go out and do this thing. And so that is the same kind of solo game where you're kind of managing resources in a different way and getting into situations that are, in part based on random rolls.
So
okay,
what you're saying is we need to go, damn you, Derek! Damn
Derek.
you all to hell!
And if you're interested, The Broken Cask is available. It's done and available for sale.
Thank you. That sounds awesome. Thank you for that.
I'm writing it down right now.
Have you fallen down the rabbit hole of other solo games too? Because I've been looking at some too, and I started playing D100. And I can't remember who wrote that. I had found on Board Game Geek. It was like D100, and then I also kickstarted the Lighthouse at the End of the Universe. After I kind of had hit that 1,000-Year-Old Vampire, I guess have you kind of fallen down that rabbit hole as well, or
a little bit with some. One that I came across that I really liked was it did really well on Zine Quest a few years ago. It's called Artifact, ARTEFACT, and it's basically it's a journaling game with prompts and things, but basically you're portraying, so to speak, an item of importance in this world, and the game prompts you through like all of the different important events and people that this item has been a part of, and so you use the game to build a history to this artifact, to this important piece of gear. It could be a weapon, it could be a book, it could be a piece of jewelry, could be a ship, it could be all sorts of different things, and the game kind of takes you through the process of like figuring out what that is and giving it this a history, a life.
I'm waiting eagerly for the next one called Bucket of Bolts.
Which is that, but for spaceships. Yeah, which is like, how did this spaceship get built? What did it, what was it first used for? How did it become important to this event in the galactic history? and so forth. Yeah.
I like spaceships. I love spaceships. Question for you, Craig.
Uh-oh.
So what's your favorite encounter so far?
I'm torn.
Oh yes, it's going to be a good answer then.
I'll pick one of my own and one that Shireen designed. There's an encounter where you find yourself, this is one of those darker ones, right, where you find the fell beast. And if you can
Ooh.
defeat the beast, well, first you can't defeat the beast if your willpower is too low. Like if your willpower is too low, you just run away.
Oh no, I would immediately fail that because I usually forget about willpower and I'm like, no, I'll be fine.
But if you defeat the beast, you can get a very useful bit of magic. And then Shireen wrote, and I've mentioned this to people before because this is a great example of when the idea here was like I knew there was gonna be like 90 encounters, and I was like, I'm gonna start repeating myself. I'm afraid that I'm gonna have encounters that are gonna be too similar. There's just like design spaces and ideas that I'm not going to come up with, and that is when you bring in somebody else to co-design or freelance something out to people. So I had, Shireen come on board to do that. And she came up with an encounter that is called the cookie jar tree, where a little creature in the forest wants you to help bake cookies to fill up the cookie jars that are attached to this tree. They're basically part of the tree, and have a cookie party with all the forest inhabitants that are going to show up later. And so your challenge is to use is to make a trait check that actually involves like baking and making cookies, and see if you can make enough cookies so that the cookie party can happen. I personally would never have thought of that for an encounter. But Shireen
love
did.
that so much. And I feel like that tree has like a personal beef with the Keebler elf, and like there's like cookie tree gang wars and stuff. Oh my gosh, I love it. Shireen is awesome. I like her. Her, correct? Right?
I'm sorry?
Shireen's pronoun is her.
Yes.
I like her. She's good. Shireen, we like you. You're good.
So as opposed to Thousand Year Vampire, I'm getting a very strong PG-13 vibe off of this.
Yeah, it floats in that realm. We kept it pretty family friendly. I think this is, like you were talking about playing it with a GM, like you could easily a parent could sit down and play the game with a kid, where the parent just takes, like the kid just focuses on the rules and has their character, and they roll dice and they make decisions about what they're going to do. And then the parent kind of uses or the older sibling or whoever, right?
Or the teacher of a large classroom of children.
Exactly.
Ben.
And you read the stuff, read the kind of encounter information and the inhabitant information and everything to them. And you could even then, like, you could interject more role playing, where you if there's an encounter where you're meeting this like happy-go-lucky person who's wandering through the jungle, it's just a real quick, it's just a couple of sentences in the book, but if you had somebody like a parent or Ben taking on the role of GM there, you could like turn that whole encounter into an actual role play moment and then make the check.
So like, again, I love Thousand Year Vampire. It was amazing. And I, ever since playing it, I was like, man, how can I turn this into a classroom activity? Because I'm always trying to figure out a way to bring games into the classroom. Last year I played Fall of Magic with the kids, and they had to write stories about like what happened to their characters in Fall of Magic, and that was a ton of fun. But in any event, Thousand Year Vampire, pretty rated R. I was like, okay, I could steal this system. I would just have to come up with my own prompts, and it's a doable thing. But I'm like, it's weeks of work probably, and when it's done, I'd have something great forever. But I was like, I don't have the time right now. I got a kid on the way and another book to finish. Blah blah blah. But I'm like, taking your game and using the journaling option, that sounds like off the shelf, exactly like the kind of thing I'd want to do. Unless you're like, no, there's a couple like sex encounters or something.
No,
like that.
nothing like that. I mean,
I don't think so. Like,
no.
No.
Shireen and I went so far as to like make it fantasy, fantastical, and all that sort of thing, but do our best to not color it with a particular culture. So like if you never meet a fairy or a pixie, but you will meet a tiny person with wings.
Oh, interesting.
The person it's described as a tiny person with wings. So the person who's playing the game can make up what that is, or they can just say, well, it's okay, it's a pixie. That's what I'm familiar with. Or if they're from
It's a fairy,
another
it's a
culture,
djinn, whatever. You know.
if it's another culture that has like a similar sort of critter in the folklore, then that might be them. That might be that from, you just let it be.
I am done with you,
specific
Craig. This is
specific
great.
to the player.
I'm just gonna go. I'm done with you, Craig. Thank you.
All right, bye.
I'll be back.
She needs to start
that's
playing the game
fantastic.
immediately.
Yeah,
Immediately
like,
start
can
playing
it-
this game.
Can we? Did we get a copy? I did.
On that note, tell us about the Kickstarter levels.
It's simple. There's basically two. They started out with one level, and I went to a second level in order to accommodate add-ons a certain way because I realized, oh, this isn't working the way I want it. Basically, it's $15. Gets you the PDF, and you'll get a link to purchase a soft cover at cost if you want to do that, and that'll just be a few bucks plus your shipping. Then there's also a $20 pledge that gets you the PDF, and we will have the book printed and shipped to you. Because the reason that so like for people who don't want to dink around with that extra step of having to like, well, now I have to remember to make sure to order my book. Also, it's nice. It makes that a shipping based option, which then allows shipping based add-ons. So there are some of my other games where there are books already done and printed and sitting in warehouses. You can take that $20 level. If you also want to grab a copy of Capers or Good Strong Hands, the hardcover that we kickstarted previously.
Which are both fantastic.
Capers, which has the most innovative core mechanic I'd seen in years.
Oh,
I'll just keep saying it.
I
know.
like you, Ben.
Well, we've got both Capers and Good Strong Hands on our bookshelves, so I don't anticipate our addiction to Nerdburger games going away anytime soon.
I will also say that when you say that you will fulfill, fairly quickly after, I believe it was in the end of the Kickstarter, it says, yeah, this is going to be done fairly quickly afterwards. You aren't lying, because Low Stakes was the first one I got out of all the Zine Quest stuff that I kickstarted. I think it was literally like maybe a couple weeks later. I was like, wait,
it
what?
was a month. It was maybe a month later. Well,
Yeah,
it was small. It only had a few pieces of artwork. I did the layout myself, so I wasn't relying on somebody else's schedule. It was a unique situation.
yeah. It's still though, like
It was a very nice surprise.
you were very good at your estimation of how long it takes to fulfill. So that kudos to you, sir.
In fairness, I did place the fulfillment date for this one in May. Not because I think it's going to take that long to do, because the game is written, edited, play tested, and the artwork is done. I placed it that far out in case, like, I don't know, the entire supply chain goes to absolute crap and nobody can get paper to print your book on.
Are you talking?
Or it takes a month to get a proof copy printed and shipped to me, which is what is happening right now.
Oh no, I'm so sorry, honey.
And so if the book goes through 2 or maybe, heaven forbid, 3 rounds of proofing, that's 3 months worth of waiting for just to. So I hope to get it done faster. My goal is to get it done faster, but I wanted to temper expectations that, like, if there are some, there might be delay, and that's not even including, like, what happens if there's like some emergency on my part, like I just
Right.
Godzilla appears.
I'm out of commission for a month.
Or somebody, blocks the Suez Canal.
Yeah, you can't
Again.
get a shipping container.
Like
Yeah.
that would never happen.
Yeah, just
But-
all that kind of stuff. I wanted to make sure that, like, I've typically tried to account for the possibility of delays and things like that, and set a date that's realistic, and then deliver faster whenever possible.
Now, are you giving out like an ash can version of the PDF without art, or is it wait until May to get a proper PDF?
Well, it's wait until it's done. Like
Okay.
I said, Ben, I'm hoping it's not going to be me.
Okay.
Um,
I thought that was just for the physical version.
Well, I'll it'll probably be the PDF and the physical will
Okay,
release
gotcha.
simultaneously because
Okay.
there will be a fair bit of kind of post work that needs to go into the PDF too, because it's going to be super it's gonna be hyperlinked within the pages, bookmarked, all that kind of stuff. Got to make sure I want people to be able to navigate the page, the book very quickly and very easily. The character sheet's going to be all form fillable, and there'll be also time spent just kind of testing that, making sure that like, okay, every link is doing exactly what it's supposed to do. I've got all the links I need. I'm going to give it to some people probably on my Discord and say, hey, if you backed it, I'll send you a copy. Go through here and try to figure out, find the spot where there's a link that we need. Like, where am I
Craig.
missing something that will help
You okay,
Right.
okay, Sarah?
that will
Why
help
are
the
you so-
PDF be more
Why are you
navigable.
so good at this? Why are you so good at this?
So now thinking about that, it's just off the top of my head, you're saying that you're hyperlinking all that. Have you ever given a thought to maybe put this in like an app form? Because in my head, I'm like, this might be a really good like app to sit there, like on your, like you said, on your lunch break, 20 minutes, 30 minutes, boop, 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 boop.
That is, it's I'm not ruling it out. It's something I've thought about. It would be one of those things that I have never, ever dealt with anything even remotely like that. So the learning curve and the effort and time and everything that would go into it would be a significant shift for me. So I have to be, if I'm going to, whenever I'm going to make that leap into something that I've never, ever done before, like when the first time I did an offset print run, I have to be like fully prepared and on board. Like, I'm not going to half-ass this. I'm going to make sure that like I really pay attention and know everything that I'm doing and find the right way to do it, the best way to do it. So I would not discount it, but it's a little scary.
Fair call. But I would be really, really liking to see that. I think at some point, I think it'd just be really cool to have that little app based boop, 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 playing through the story. And
We might
Great
know
idea.
some people
I would love it.
that do apps. I'm just saying. So if you want to like hook up, we could probably let you know.
The art's really cool too.
Yes, art is lovely.
The art is part of how this game came to be. A couple of years ago, I came across Gemma's artwork. She's at Ashen Wave on Twitter. And it's all this really fantastical, it's all completely out of her imagination. It's not fan art kind of stuff. It's like she just dreams something up. She paints or digitally paints it. And it's all these bright and saturated colors. And it's all really gorgeous stuff and fantastical. And I just started following her on Twitter and just noticed like, well, she's got a lot of artwork. She does this a lot. And about a year ago, I reached out to her and said, like, I love your artwork. I think it would be great artwork for the right type of role-playing game. If I can think of the role-playing game that this artwork would fit, would you be interested in licensing some of your art for the game? And she said, sure. And so then a year later, I was toying around with this thing based on Lost and putting it on an island. And I'm thinking about that in my head. And I'm flipping through Twitter one day and I saw some of her art and I was like, nope, this is it. This is the game. This is make it light and fun and airy and use this art. And so then I went and I culled through all of her art that I could get my hands on and found all the pieces that I thought were like, okay, these are the ones that I can use. And then we talked and that's how the artwork got done. It was already done. I've designed the game for her artwork.
Oh, that's lovely. I love that. What was their Twitter handle again?
Ashen Wave.
Ashen Wave.
You're in good company with the role-playing game designed based on art, because that's the origin of Deadlands and Shadowrun, I want to say.
Oh, and also I want to say Tales from the Loop, because that came from
totally.
all
all
Arkham side.
that stuff. Yeah, all those Tales from the Loop, Things from the Blood.
Free League, we love you.
But
Quote
it's
me on
clearly
that
like
anywhere.
it's clearly a powerful goad inspiration for RPG design. Monty Cook said that, writers and game designers find art inspiring and artists find words constricting, and you're much better off, like leaning into, well, I'm a writer or a game designer and I find this art inspiring. I'm going to go do something rather than trying to find an artist to be inspired by your words. But we'll see. Well, this is really, really cool. Who else has something to say? Anybody?
I was gonna say what piece of art was what kind of locked it in for you with hers of her art, like because to me when I saw the fire bean with like the skull and the flames, I was like, this sold me right here.
That's a great piece. I think the artwork that I use as the project image, like right at the top, the like the green snake woman in the lily pond,
Like the sea serpent,
the sea serpent lady, the sea serpent woman in the lily pond. The artwork is actually, the title of it is The Basilisk Who Loved the Stars.
Wow.
She comes
like
up with some
that.
great names for some of her artwork as well. That was a good one. That one got me. And then there's I don't remember what it was called, and I'm going to try to describe it because it's not on the page. I'm just trying to find it so I make sure I get this right. There's a knight with a massive sword wearing kind of this floating crown and a floating skull in her hand, and she's riding a llama as a mount. And I thought,
That's
that's
fantastic.
spectacular.
I want to ride a llama. Oh my God.
Gemma did a series of and I think she's supposed to be War, if I remember correctly. She did like a series of the four horsemen, but it's like the four llama people of the apocalypse. And I don't know if she did all four, if she only got through three, but there's multiple ones out there, and I think that was War. That
I did My Little
armored
Ponies.
knight with the sword.
I did My Little Ponies, custom My Little Ponies as the four horsemen of apocalypse. I like her. I like all of these people. I love this. This is a good day. This is a great interview. I love it.
All right, then I'm going to say, Sarah, where can people find us on Twitter?
At Plot Points Pod.
If they want to email us, where can they email us?
plotpointsemail@gmail.com, and I'll try my best to get back to you as soon as I can.
And Craig, so this is on Kickstarter. When does it end?
November 4th, 5th, something like that. It's a Thursday, first Thursday in November.
It'll be November 4th then. I happen to know that.
Nerd.
I'm a date nerd, looking at calendars all the time. Well, again, it sounds super interesting, incredibly fantastic. Thank you for coming on the show and talking about it. We really appreciate it. With that, I guess I'll say I'm Ben Riggs.
I'm Brad Davies.
I'm Sarah Babe, featuring today's awesome guest,
Craig Campbell.
All right.
Thank you so much, Craig.
Thank you. Yeah.